I have a confession to make. Every video I've made in the past year has been an attempt to avoid having to make this one. I had too much to say and not enough evidence that I had the chops to say it. It's a new year though, and after a year figuring out how to even make a YouTube video, it's time to put an end to the procrastination. So with that in mind, I need to ask a question I've pondered since January 31st, 2023. What is Season: A Letter to the Future? And why am I still thinking about it over a year after playing it for the first time?
Is it recording?
Yes.
Okay.
I bet you're wondering what's in the box, aren't you? Stay tuned for the big reveal in Act 3. Sorry if that opening was jarring. This is going to be a bit of a departure from what I've made before. We're here to stare into the future, not into each other's eyes, as alluring as mine may be. So, this is going to be a bit more visual variety than usual. We shouldn't dawdle on change too long, though. There will be plenty of time for that soon enough. Instead, let's break that question into two parts. Part 1, what is Season? It's not as simple a question as it appears on the surface. Physically, it's a video game. If we want to get even more specific, we could go so far as to call it a casual indie adventure game, whatever that means. Mechanically, it's a slightly modified walking simulator, meaning your main way of interacting with the world is by moving through it. The term can be a bit negative to serious gamers, but in this case, I mean it in the nicest way possible. Season does ask you to walk, run, and bike your way across scenic landscapes, but it adds a few important tools to keep you invested in the scenery as more than just a backdrop. Namely, you get a camera and a microphone to record the sights and sounds you find along the way, and a scrapbook to organize it all. You are heavily prompted to spend a decent portion of the gameplay looking in your scrapbook, deciding what belongs and where it all goes. As far as plot, here's the basics. You play as a woman named Estelle, tasked with capturing the current season before a new one begins. In the world of the game, a season is a period of time defined by the way it shaped the culture. It's very similar to the way we think of generations. You travel around filling the pages of your scrapbook with thoughts, pictures, and audio in an attempt to tell the story of this season to anyone in the future who might be interested. None of that leads us into the second half of the question, though, so we need to consider one more part of what Season is. What is it thematically? Yet another question that's tougher than it may seem. Depending on how you play it, Season may not really be about anything. Some parts are unavoidable, but how you choose to interact with the world will dictate what you get out of it. If you breeze through doing the bare minimum to get to the finish line, then Season is about doing whatever it takes to finish the game. It's not much of a theme, but luckily it's also not the intended experience. Before you can even start the game, you are prompted by the developer to experience everything at your own pace. The game design does everything but beg you to soak it all in. There are no time limits, no strict waypoints, and no conventional goals to be found. You will not press F to pay your respects, but don't worry, you will still be expected to mourn. If you approach the game with that purposeful but calm mindset, then Season is about capturing the world from your point of view. There are an infinite number of ways to frame a photo and countless combinations of filters, focal lengths, and angles you can use even after that. A dedicated person with nothing but free time could conceivably capture every second of audio after you get your recorder. Because of these practically limitless options, whatever you do capture, you'll probably be the only player to do so in exactly that way. It's as open-ended as just carrying a camera and a recorder into the real world would be. And that's kind of the point. One thing is immediately apparent in this scrapbook of current history. You can capture as much as you want, but there's not enough room for everything. It's extremely important when you realize there never could be. Every picture has to have borders, something that's excluded. Every recording has a start and a stop. This game isn't just about capturing a moment, it's about deciding what parts of that moment are worth capturing. Take a picture, and you lose the ambiance. Take a recording, and you lose the visual. Use both, and you have to cut something else that could have fit in both those spots. So what do you include? How can you, in the present, know what they, in the future, will want or even need to know about now, their past? When you think of now as then, you start to find yourself almost nostalgic for the moment you're currently in. In an instant, you've ripped yourself from time through the power of empathy. Are you starting to see why I got a little obsessed? If we have to tie it down to something more concrete, this game is about memory, history, ritual, purpose, loss, religion, art, generational trauma, and being a hipster. Not necessarily in that order. So in short, Season is a lot. It brings up a lot of topics and expects the player to take the time to really think it through. And for a year, I've done exactly that. So I guess that brings us to part 2 of the question. Why am I still thinking about Season? This is not the first video game to be thematically dense. It's actually pretty typical of walking simulators to supplement what they lack in mechanical complexity with a bit more nuanced of a story. I've played my fair share of those games, though, and none of them have ever stuck with me like this one has. So there has to be something else going on here. What sets this game apart is its focus on history, and more importantly, the act of preserving it. History as we know it is in sort of a weird place. For a while, people weren't so focused on trying to understand the cultures that came before. Tradition and ritual were a way of passing down lessons from the past, but there was never a major focus on actually recounting non-fictional events. Even the earliest historians weren't exactly up to today's standards. The so-called father of history, Herodotus, was just a Greek guy hyping up how cool the Greeks were compared to the much lamer Persians. A little more bias than you might want from a textbook today, although, let's be honest, those could probably do with some updates too. Eventually, we got a better idea of what a historian should be and the kind of things they should value. We figured out that it might be useful to dig through the past in order to establish a context for the present, and now history is a standard school subject right up there with arithmetic and biology. So what has that done to us? I cannot overstate how weird it is that we can think of history on this meta, self-aware level. It's somewhat unprecedented just how self-conscious people are about everything, and it colors the way we view things. Now that it's in the public consciousness, we have a bad habit of obsessing over history. In the old days, we were still playing catch-up, and history was written long after it happened. Inevitably, we caught up. And these days, we make memes about how thick the chapter on 2020 will be in our children's history textbooks. In this modern age, we are both historians and participants. This hyper-awareness doesn't just end with current events, though. Thanks to the internet, we are all a part of history. Every Instagram post, every take on Twitter, every TikTok trend, every 10-hour-long YouTube video about why you lose socks in the dryer, it's all documented and cataloged online whether you like it or not. And a lot of us like it. Who can blame us? It's a form of legacy. We perform for the present and save it for the future. On one hand, it's an unprecedented level of perspective for our future historians to draw from. On the other, we've subjected them to a nightmarish onslaught of misinformation and screaming matches to sift through for the hope that there's even a needle in this 50-acre field of hay. Like I said, history is in a weird place. And thanks to Season, I have some thoughts about that. There are lots of times where you are asked to make what might be decried as a pointless choice. Questions with answers that barely change an outcome are this game's favorite kind. And if this were a role-playing game, that would be bad. But your role here is already defined. The questions are just a way to guide your thoughts on how you should play the modern historian participant. They're trying to call your attention to this strange relationship we have with history, and they're how I ended up ripped from time through the power of empathy. Do you think it's right to record a vulnerable moment? What place does a personal opinion have in a history book? Can you really capture a season with facts and data alone? If not, where do you draw the line between giving a perspective and giving in to bias? How is your framing shaping the way a future reader will think of this season? Is it an accurate picture or an idealized one? Could you even tell the difference? There isn't a right answer to these questions, not in this game at least, so the best you can do is fill out your scrapbook with them in mind. Pages full of photos, recordings, and sketches alone feel stark and barren. Pages full of text feel expository and prose-like. There are just as many ways to fill out a page as there are to document the world around you. The game even lets you add stamps just for the sake of decoration if you think they belong. But it doesn't just stop at what you think belongs. You're not the only person who experienced this season. The people you meet are just as ready to provide their ideas of what history can be. So let's see what they have to say. The first person you meet is your mother. That's unavoidable. She's preparing breakfast in a ritual to create a pendant. You place 5 items in a burner, 1 for each sense, and she will give up a memory tied to that sense. At the end of the ritual, you will have a powerful pendant that protects your mind. She asks you to promise not to forget anything. To her, a well-guarded memory is the only thing that can truly capture a season. The next person you meet isn't there anymore. In the wilderness, there is graffiti all over the walls from someone who feels very differently from your mother. They want to kill this season. The large expanse of land between villages is a lonely place, and they're ready for something new. History is not of concern for them. Their eyes are set firmly on what's next. Ironically, or perhaps not, you can capture this hatred for the season as part of it. It wouldn't be the first time someone thought they were born in the wrong era. When you make it to the next settlement, Tiang Valley, you meet a social worker named Poros. He is immediately interested in your tools, and he takes a big interest in your task. He's part of an idealistic group called the Grey Hands, whose goal is to help people while maintaining a neutral position. Poros doesn't think history should be tainted by ideals. He pushes you in the right direction to uncovering what the Grey Hands are up to and how they might be behind this change in seasons. He hopes you'll be able to document what was happening behind the scenes because he believes that the means should not be forgotten for the sake of the ends. Once inside the Tiang Valley, you can immediately go and meet 3 different people. For the sake of maintaining some sense of chronology, we'll start with Sofan. She's a mother and a widow trying to figure out what to take with her before she moves out of the valley. You help her decide between taking things that are meaningful to her, her late husband's memory, or her little boy. Her history is contained in these items, and like with your scrapbook, not everything can fit. She makes you consider how much you should keep for yourself, how much you should keep for those who have passed, and how much to keep for the next generation. Whatever you pick, she learns by the end that there is a such thing as being too caught up in history. Her mourning has to come to an end if she wants to move forward. Her son, Kochi, is the next stop on our trip. He takes us on a bike tour of the valley he has lived in his whole life. For us, this is the first time seeing these things. But for him, it's the last. He collects trinkets from various places that are immediately infused with meaning because we now have a glimpse of them as lived in. Our final stop is his father's grave, where he places all the things he's collected from around the valley. His whole life in this valley is laying here on a grave. We can see how much of history is about the people in it. These little personal stories matter. On the opposite end of experience is the Tiang Valley artist Meteora. Where Kochi was full of naive wonder, she has only tired dejection. She spent her whole life trying to capture the essence of the valley in her art, but now, the dam keeping this valley dry is days away from breaking and washing it all away. Good riddance, she says. She never found what she was looking for in her old art. There was always something to pick apart. With everything about to receive a watery burial, though, she's convinced to take one last attempt. She stands before one of her pieces and sings a song. Satisfied, she muses that this moment is the art she searched for all these years. Her history is summed up in one art moment. That's what she wants to give to the future. The last person you meet in Tiang Valley is a monk deep within a temple whose doors only open at sunset, which is why you have to save him for last. His name is Easel. He's the last of the monks, and he's become a bit jaded. He parrots ritual because it's his duty, not because of any faith in them. But in this world, ritual has immense power, and when he sees your pendant, he changes his tune. He asks you to recreate the ritual that made your pendant in an attempt to spread its gift to everyone else you met in the valley that day. If you say yes, you can gather his memories, give him your pendant, and listen as he prays. He firmly believes that history belongs to the people, and that it is not right for just one person to carry a season with them. And honestly, what gives you the right to be the one who remembers? Just because you felt called to do it? Does that give you permission to deprive these people of protection for their memories? Easel gives you a chance to reevaluate what's more important. One steadfast memory, or a collective story, told in unison. I can never bear to say no to him. This story belongs to more than just me. You can agree or disagree with each person as much as you want, but at the end of the day, it's your job to decide what's in your letter to the future. You will end the game with your collection of art, perspective, ritual, and above all, history. You have to determine what it is you think you owe the future. It's a daunting question, but we should ask it if we want to pull ourselves free from this one-sided obsession with legacy. So I should probably drop the centrist act and just tell you what it is I owe the future. And the best way I can do that is to show you what's in this box and tell you the story of the worst financial decision I've ever made. Towards the end of 2021, I was going through the same spiral as the rest of the world. I'd spent the same 2 years as everyone else, trying to come to terms with so much change in so little time. I was thinking a lot about art and how badly I wanted to make it. I was thinking about history and how we would be remembered. And I was thinking about patterns and how desperately I needed something to anchor me to every single day. So I went out and I bought a Polaroid camera, and I made a New Year's resolution. Each and every day of 2022, I would take a picture of myself, so that in the future, I could look back on all those days of that year and see how much I had grown. You're starting to see why this was an unwise financial decision, right? The camera aside, film does not come cheap. The first pictures were rough. I had to learn very quickly about how much light it takes just for a somewhat visible photo. But I did learn, and that was part of the fun. I challenged myself to try different things, play around with double exposures and different types of frames. I had friends and family join in on pictures some days. I tried to find an interesting background and witty titles for each photo to help me remember something from that day. And at the end of the year, I started to dig through everything to look for a point to it all. Some theme or through line that would tie my year together into more than just 365 Polaroids in a shoebox. There were immediate patterns to notice in the pictures, like how I always wanted to hold the camera at a specific angle, or how I kept making the same stupid face when I was tired, and so many other little things that I had never noticed about myself. I was shocked at how well the pictures brought back dormant memories. I saw the history of my life unfolding in front of me. I started to get the sneaking feeling that this was art somehow. I couldn't justify it at the time because I had a rudimentary definition of art, and a bunch of selfies didn't fit it. Then, just a month into 2023, I started playing Season, and the scrapbook to immortalize a season helped me piece together what it was I had been doing. If you ask me to side with one of the characters you meet in the game, I'm staunchly on the side of Meteora. Her moment capturing the essence of the valley is the same to me as my 365 frames capturing a year. I believe with her that art belongs to the future as much as it does the present, and it's among our duties to capture this present for future reflection. When you go to a museum, no one is shocked to see ancient art sitting in a display case. It helps us to gain a better understanding of the people and the time. If our art can be a moment, then we are capturing that moment to share with the rest of the world, now and later. We should spend more time thinking about that when we're making it. You want a legacy? Make art. It's what we owe to each other. Those are our letters to the future. I think it's very necessary that Estelle uses a scrapbook to capture her season, and that we can decorate it to our heart's content. To quote a previous video, it's very quintessential logical art, a perfect mix of style and substance. We need these things now, but they will also need them later, just like we always have. And if you get nothing else from this video, hear this. Art doesn't have to be professional, and it does not require a terrible financial decision. I'm grateful for the experience I got, but honestly, I had a phone. It would have been just as easy to take pictures with that and print them out later. Now's a great time to figure that out, I know. I said before that we are constantly cataloging our lives online. You don't have to stop that, just do it with more intention. Consider what you're making. A lot of this stuff exists everywhere, forever. Take advantage of that. If you're just on social media to keep up with friends and family, more power to you, but that's becoming less and less of the norm. We're online because that's where things are happening. So let's make things happen. Don't just make a post, capture the moment. Make art. You're already aspiring to it, just realize it. It's not going to be great at first. God knows I still have plenty of work to do. But we have to do it. No one is content without art. It's good for your soul. Even the hardest of hearts will melt under the right tune. I have yet to find evidence to the contrary. To be an artist is to be human. So get out there and make something for the future. If you're still worried that too much time has passed, that you cannot possibly have something to offer the future, trust in these last words of wisdom Estelle gives us.
It is not too late.
Go make history.
Is it recording?
Yes.
Okay. How to leave home for my daughter. Find a sacred square of earth. Lay down so you have the dirt at your back. Close your eyes. Close everything. Do you see for yourself? You see for the dead, for the unborn. Do you listen for yourself? You listen for the dead, for the unborn. Your ancestors are in that dirt. All the living and all the dead are holding you up. Now, stand. They're still there, aren't they? It's time to move, to entangle yourself everywhere with everyone. So the next time you lay down in the dirt, you will have so much more to tell them.